Hello and welcome to Deja View, the Ithacans Weekly Review podcast. I'm here today with Colin Tessier, Liam Conway. We're going to talk about Overlord in a very condensed show because we have to double record this, which is an illusion I just broke. We're recording this right after Suspiria, so I'm tired and cranky. Colin, tell me about this movie.
All you really need to know, Jake, is that a group of World War II soldiers crash lands behind enemy lines, and they find this Nazi laboratory, and the Nazis are doing some bad stuff, and they want to stop it.
Yes. Now, there are a few details that are missing there. The main one is the weird stuff they find are zombies, basically, are super soldiers that are functionally zombies. And this movie was marketed in a real fun way, where if you look at the trailers and you look at all of the materials about it, all of the public discourse about it, it's about, hey, this is a cool movie where people shoot Nazi zombies. We're here for it. Now that's cool. What's deceptive about that is that the first act of this movie, before any zombies are introduced, is about an hour and 20 minutes long or an hour long in this hour and 50-minute movie. The first chunk is just a war movie. And a good one, an okay one, but nothing more than that for the most part, you know, save for a few little spicy details. And now neither of you knew anything about this going in, correct?
I saw one trailer, and my first thought was a dark version of Captain America, essentially, and I was mostly right.
And Liam?
I knew there was more than just like it's a war movie. I knew there was some weird stuff going on, but that's like I pretty much knew nothing.
Yeah. I knew everything, as I always do. And found this to be a very frustrating experience, even though I liked it overall. There's a subgenre that I really like. I don't care about Nazi zombies, but I really do like the Nazis are messing with the occult or the weird, which is why I have every collection of Hellboy I own here with me, because I bring my library to this show every week to show it off on TV. I like that a lot. I like Hellboy a lot. I like Wolfenstein a lot. And I thought this was going to be more along those lines, where you got to like discover some weird stuff. And it really isn't that. But there's a whole movie built around it. And Liam, you were telling me you liked a lot of how this movie moved even before they got to some of the weirdness.
Yeah, well, I think it's shot really well. I think there's a lot of movies that I've seen, like, I don't know, the trend of like shaky cam and really rapid cutting is like leaving us a little bit now, but it's still like I've seen movies with budgets way beyond this movie that don't shoot action nearly as well. Like every single scene I knew what was going on. They do a really good job of, I think, making it clear what's happening almost throughout the entire runtime of the film. So I think even, like, I don't know, you said it's like an okay war movie, but like I think even that, like all the action sequences I thought were really exciting, even though the characters maybe not as exciting.
Yeah, and that is definitely true. And that's really big. Like, that's not to be understated, because the scape of action movies now are often impossible to decode. You know, like the running joke on Transformers is that you have no idea what the heck is going on the entire time.
Right.
And this isn't that, like, fortunately. I think I'm going to say a lot of mean things about this movie. Most of my problems are structural and character. I think there's a lot of fun little moments that happen and little set pieces that happen, even if overall it's a mess for the most part. I don't know how you felt about this coming out of it, Colin, because you had a weird look on your face when we left the theater after we saw it this morning.
I thought it was fine. I mean, I like the genre, you know, where the Nazis are doing weird stuff with science, and in this case, it's zombies / mutants in a way. So I was intrigued. I didn't know how to feel about the movie because I don't really know what it wanted to be, given that the first hour plus is a war movie, which is fine. But then I was going in thinking it'd be a horror movie about the zombies, about the weird science, and they really didn't flesh out enough of that aspect to satisfy me. So I enjoyed it. I had fun watching it. I wanted more characterization. I didn't really care about what was happening. I invest in the characters, which are usually some good benchmarks for a good film, I would say. I thought it did a good job of capturing the World War II era, you know, the tropes in a way that wasn't just a direct recycling of all things we've seen before, but it wasn't groundbreaking either. You know, it was pretty straightforward.
I think a lot of these characters fall back into the war movie trope figures, where after the plane crashes, you're left with the rookie, who is defined by the fact that he's a rookie, and everybody throughout the movie calls him Private until the end, where he's still Private, which I found very weird because
very
his arc in the movie is becoming a soldier. He's paired with a corporal, somebody higher up in the military who is the extreme soldier and is going to do the mission at any cost and is going to go and take down this radio tower because that's what they're sent there to do. And there are zombies in that bunker. Doesn't matter. We're still going to take down this radio tower. Really singular-minded, who then dies, and the mentor figure then becomes, is carried through in this new character. Then you have Chloe, who's the only character whose name I can remember, which is a good sign for her. And this movie is about her getting revenge against the Nazis. French villager, whose parents were killed and whose aunt was exposed to the formula that's going on and exposed to some of the weird science. And then there's this comedy soldier who has an antagonistic relationship with Chloe's brother, who's this little boy. And then again, eventually saves his life and grows to love him because you have to have, some emotions in this movie full of murder and shooting. Which again, I'm very dismissive. I didn't hate this that much. I didn't hate this that much. I didn't mind this that much. I had a good time and thought that this is as good an execution of the Nazi zombie idea as I could ask for. I just wish it had been shorter.
Agreed. I think that's pretty fair.
That's the theme of this show. Everything is too long, and I don't want to sit through it. Oh, I'm old before my years. The other side of this that I think is interesting is the visual presentation. And again, I know this is something that you liked, Liam, the way these monsters look and the way they move and interact. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I think it's interesting because typically I'm used to the Wolverine or the Deadpool. It's they get shot and then you see the bullet come back out of them. And what I thought was interesting about this is it's like you said, they're not really zombies because they're still roughly the same person that they were before, but they don't sound different besides they just kind of scream more. But when they get shot and stuff, they maintain all the wounds that they already had. They just survive through them, which I thought was something I don't think I've ever seen that before. It was these guys get really hurt and then they take whatever the serum is and they're okay, but they don't look okay.
It's imperfect. So there's the main villain of this movie is this Nazi commandant who eventually gets shot in the face and takes the serum to become stronger. And he heals. He can still move around, he can still do things, he's really strong, but he's got half a face. Mm-hmm. And it is that imperfect horror movie nightmare, which I wish they leaned more into. I want this to be spooky.
Yeah.
That's why I have the pumpkin. That's why the prop in the center of this table has been spooky for the last 4 weeks. And I want that to continue.
Honestly, I think that lack of horror and general, scares in the movie, I think that's really my biggest problem with it, because it was marketed as this horror movie about zombies, about these creatures. And I feel like the movie really leaned into the idea that the real horror was the Nazis themselves, and I could get behind that. But for a film that was really going, at least in its marketing and the trailers, the way, and as a viewer going in expecting to see a lot more, if not jump scares, general scariness, it really didn't hit home on a lot of what you'd hope to see there.
Yeah, there is also a weird, that actually made me think of something. There's a weird couple of lines in this movie where some of the more soldiery soldiers, the captain in the beginning who gets immediately killed, and then the mentor figure who dies down the line, say, if the Nazis are going to do terrible things, we need to be just as bad. And they say that enough times. I think it's 2 or 3 times where I go, there's a lot to unpack in that that's not great. And I think ultimately it's supposed to be a condemnation of it because the mentor figure blows himself up to get rid of this because he knows that, the Americans will do just as bad as the Nazis did with this stuff. But it's also a movie about becoming the best soldier. which is a very patriotic idea, which is all about doing what you need to do in the name of war. And there's some really weird, twisted messages, I think, with those two ideas that don't necessarily gel together.
It's very ironic in the story and in the way that the film's put together, because that idea of, well, we need to play as dirty as they are to win, that's kind of a recurring theme throughout the movie. But then the whole last 40 minutes are just left and right, bodies dropping, murder, and yeah, they're mutated creatures and whatnot, but it's still, doesn't really feel like it's a logical connection to that question of, like, is it okay to play on their playing field? And
I mean, I don't even think it's a question. Like, no, it's not. You don't do that. It's not. It doesn't seem like a question that the movie is raising. It seems like it's something that's accidentally being brought up, in pursuit of making this borderline rah, look at us, we're soldiers movie. Because there's a lot of time dedicated to that idea. Like, there's no question about it. And the end of this movie, and again, the discussion around this movie is, yeah, kill the Nazis. This is, the end of this movie is all of them seizing this radio tower, this church where the base is hidden, and blowing every Nazi up. And that's what this movie is supposed to be like. Yeah, take them down. There's no question. Get rid of them. Which, hey, you know what? Welcome to 2018. Like, all right, sure. If this is like a cathartic experience, let it go. I never like violence in anything, so I think and I realized that recently. Like, I don't like violence in any movie whatsoever, so it's always going to be difficult for me to handle that.
It's a pretty violent movie, Jay.
yeah.
Liam, we did Halloween, we did Sabrina, we did Suspiria, and now we're doing this. And all of those are extremely violent and extremely bloody, and they're all horror, and I love horror. Everything I value is horror. And I realized recently that I just don't like the violent part of it.
That's very backwards, Jake.
It really is. Like, even the violence in this makes me uncomfortable, even though it's Nazis and they're the most odious possible people, like, imaginable. And I still look at the violence and I go, I don't like it.
It's like really violent though. Like, I've seen some very violent things, and this is up there. This is one of the most violent things I think I've ever seen. It's it's really violent.
The best analog to this that I can think of is the recent Wolfenstein games, which are Nazi games. I don't know if either of you are familiar with them. But we're going to beat the Nazis up, and we're going to make it as gory as we can in the process. And this is that. Faces are being blown off. Heads are being smashed into floors. Like, there's a relentless grotesqueness to the way this goes. Which, yeah, freaked me out, because I don't like that anymore. I can't do it. Even when it's zombies, oh God. And this is trying to, like, harken back to a different era. This is meant to be it's meant to be kind of like a 70s grindhouse thing, but it doesn't feel like it. And the opening credits mess with that a little bit because they're more, like, it's more 1940s. It feels more like 50s, we're storming the base, weird science fiction kind of thing, than 70s grindhouse horror, which is what it ultimately becomes in the end.
Well, the beginning starts with this very 40s feel, and I was like, yo, like, this is so cool. It looks like a movie made in the 40s. And then that's what the opening credits are, and then the closing credits are just a rap song. Like, it ends like a movie from now, but it starts like a movie from the 40s.
Yeah. There's a lot of confused identity about this, and I think we've covered some of that pretty well. This is a shorter episode. We're not going to be having a show next week. You can check back in 2 weeks for the same usual shenanigans with the same usual people. Thank you guys for coming on.
Always a pleasure, Jake.
Now if you want to plug anything, you can, whatever it may be, so long as it's not heinous.
You can follow me on Twitter at CT_2110. I actually use it sometimes, but that's about it.
You can follow me on Instagram at ThatGuitarBro.
It's never going to stop being funny. I see you come up in my Instagram feed sometimes, and it's very confusing. And then I remember, and then it's not. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at JD_Leary. Going to use it one day. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, on pretty much anywhere else you can listen to a podcast. You can watch it on YouTube. And I highly recommend doing so because there's some nonsense that happens. I recommend checking out our Suspiria episode or our Sabrina episode to get an idea what I mean. That's all for now. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm dating this. I'm sorry. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for listening, watching, whatever.